Hey, what's up, everybody? Yellow Turtle here with my co-host Beef. Welcome to another episode of the LUKSOfam podcast, brought to you by KEEZ. The LUKSOfam podcast is meant to be a short and informational show where we provide some takes on the latest LUKSO news in the space. Today is a very special day. Today, Universal Profiles have officially launched on LUKSO mainnet, and because of this, we will be doing an overview of some frequently asked questions in the space for any newcomers or people looking to learn more about LUKSO. But first, let's hear a word from our sponsors over at LEEQUID, our preferred LUKSO staking solution.
LEEQUID is a liquid staking solution purposely built for the LUKSO blockchain. Users can stake LYX tokens and in return, earn receipt SLYX tokens redeemable one-to-one for the deposited LYX. LEEQUID notably offers flexibility, allowing users to opt in or out of staking at any moment via the protocol's liquidity pool. This feature removes the potentially extensive wait times typically associated with traditional staking methods. With the support of advisors and multi-signatories from the LUKSO team, LEEQUID is steadfast in its commitment to achieving decentralization from the beginning, underlining transparency and trust. Following a thorough audit by consensus, LEEQUID is set to launch in October, integrating suggestions to ensure a seamless and secure user experience. Don't forget to follow LEEQUID on Twitter to stay updated on opportunities for earning passive rewards and contributing to the security of the LUKSO blockchain.
Beef, how are you today?
What's up? What's up? What's up? They are live. It's a big day. Very excited for the announcements we got today. Looks like tons of people are making the universal profiles. Yeah, super great day. Haven't popped any bottles yet. I still have to go to my meat space job. But after that, I might have a celebratory beer. How about you?
Nice. I'm doing great. I set up my universal profile not too long ago. It was very easy to set up. It was very intuitive, very straightforward. You know, Fabian had mentioned in his tweet earlier that there might be some hiccups, and I saw people experiencing those hiccups, but they seem to have been cleared up pretty shortly after they got released, right? So that's really nice to see. It shows that the team is working extremely hard to make this user experience and onboarding as seamless as possible. So it's been great so far.
Yeah, definitely. Our community and the people who are trying to make profiles now should keep in mind, this is the first thing of its kind that's kind of being unrolled to this level, to have like different options like 2FA and some other options that people were having some glitches with. But the team is working on it in real time, and I think they've ironed out most of them so far. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Be easy on the devs. They're doing the best they can. This is all new. Everything is, working so far. That's great. So we should definitely be happy.
I agree.
Hey, so do you wanna hop in?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. So just to clarify again, this is kind of a video for newcomers who have stumbled across LUKSO, or for our community members just to kind of refer and refresh if they're not so sure on certain aspects of it. So I guess like the biggest and probably most broad question is, why LUKSO?
That is a good question. It is very broad. There's definitely lots of ways to answer this, but I think it really all boils down to the standards, right? The way that the LUKSO team has structured the LSPs, the LUKSO standard proposals, is night and day, essentially, from the Ethereum community. Fabian Vogelsteller, the co-founder of LUKSO, used to work for the Ethereum Foundation, and he actually developed the ERC20 standard, which is the token standard that we all know and use today. And he has said multiple times that when they put together this standard, they put it together quickly because they had to, right? It wasn't necessarily the best way to do it. It wasn't necessarily the most organized way to do it. And since then, the ERCs, the EIPs have become unstructured and unorganized in the way that they are used, the way that they are submitted, and the way that they are adopted, right? And while Fabian wanted to develop these standards, he knew that it would be a battle and a challenge to get the entire Ethereum ecosystem to change the way that they essentially ran their ecosystem, their developer ecosystem, on a dime and accept these new standards. So he set out to create LUKSO. That's an EVM blockchain forked from Ethereum. And so it's a Ethereum 2.0 blockchain that uses the Casper proof of stake consensus mechanism. And it's essentially set out to be the blockchain for the new creative economy, right? They've focused heavily on fashion, art, music, and any type of entertainment. But along with that, because it's an EVM chain, comes with the foundation for DeFi protocols and NFT protocols and things of that nature. So I would say why LUKSO? It's the LSPs, it's the organization, it's the thought and intent behind every action that they have done leading up to this point, leading up to today, these past 6 years with the launching of the universal profile. And that's my quick and dirty answer of why LUKSO.
Yeah, and that's a pretty good one. Just want to stress two things from my point of view. What makes it different, why LUKSO? Besides the standards, you also have the co-founder Marjorie Hernandez, who wanted to focus on that fashion's social side of it. And when you take blockchain and try and implement something that's not strictly financialized, it opens up different possibilities. So yeah, while we are initially like kind of gearing, some aspects of LUKSO are gearing towards a fashion, like you'd said, because it's EVM compatible, because of the universal profiles and all the features they're going to have, we're going to have DeFi that'll eventually make its way to LUKSO. So yeah, the road for LUKSO is an exciting one. Lots of possibilities.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely, man. And that kind of brings us into our next question of why another layer one, L1 blockchain?
So you did kind of highlight that, but I'll say that again because of the fact that it would be very difficult for Ethereum to, as a collective group, implement some new sort of standards, as well as implement something like universal profiles on mainnet on Ethereum. It would cost so much money. So you'd have the discourse between people trying to use the old standards in combination with the amount of funds that it would take an individual user to deploy to have something that has this much power under the hood. So like you have that aspect of it, and then kind of some other additional questions that come up when this gets brought up is like, why didn't they just become an L2 of Ethereum? And this is kind of a controversial take to some people, but it's my understanding that L2s come with security risk because you're not deploying directly on the main chain. They're either batched or some other sort of method and then implemented on the main chain. But what's really cool about LUKSO is because it's EVM, that clone pretty much of Ethereum with different standards. Whenever ETH figures out that scaling trilemma, LUKSO will be able to implement that solution on their mainnet if they choose via the validators. So it's kind of awesome that we're getting to use the best of both worlds. We have Ethereum pretty much working on the scaling solution for us. And then we have the sweet standards that enable so much more and allow adaptability from the rigidness of the current ERC20 structure.
Yeah, great answer there. And I think, you hit the nail on the head. And most of these answers kind of all boiled down to the standards, right? The LSPs created by LUKSO. So you'll be hearing it a lot throughout this episode, but there's a reason behind it. The power of these standards is far greater than any other standard in the space right now. And the way that they communicate and work together and have their adaptability and interoperability well into the future, that is what's going to set LUKSO apart. So even if you're non-technical and you don't really understand what each standard does, there are layman's ways of understanding these standards, and hopefully we can be of some service towards that as well.
Yeah. So next question, why are there two tokens? What is this LYXe and then another one, LYX? What's that all about?
Yeah, that's a good question and definitely one that comes up quite a bit. So LYXe is the Ethereum token for LUKSO. It was launched a couple of years ago, and then LYX is the actual native token for the LUKSO blockchain, and that was technically created when the network went live back in May. And now you are able to bridge your LYXe to LYX via migrate.luxo.network. There's also a nice little tutorial video on the Pink Pill Productions YouTube that will link in the description for anyone that wants to go check it out and swap their LYXe over to the LUKSO mainnet for LYX.
Yeah, definitely. So something that also comes up is like, what is the conversion ratio? So it's 1-to-1. You buy one LYXe, you can convert it to one LYX. So although they trade differently currently due to liquidity and where these tokens are offered, they are valued equally. So don't let that aspect fool you too much. And there are some people outside of the US that are able to arbitrage currently, but that will change as more markets and opportunities for our token to get listed change. A couple other things I wanted to highlight: the supply, the starting supply, because there is inflation via validators, but we do have EIP 1559 already implemented, which is the standard that pretty much tips validators for validating transactions and then burns a certain amount of LYX in that process. So if we have enough activity on our chain, we could potentially become deflationary like Ethereum has done through different time periods. Our Genesis validators did cement the idea that we should start off with 42 million initial supply. We're continuing that meme with the 442, 420. Surprised there's not more 69s. But another thing, what's kind of cool about, I guess, LYXe and LUKSO in general is initially when the first token was offered, the LYXe, Fabian and the team implemented something called a RECO, which is like a reversible ICO. The teams always had the forethought to think about what they could do to give LUKSO the best opportunity to be the most decentralized as possible. So in a way, it was kind of like you'd commit to buying a certain amount of tokens, and then at any point in time during the window, if you wanted to return your tokens and get your money back, you could. So that offered like a new aspect of an ICO, but this is the reversible ICO that hadn't been seen before, hadn't been done before. Yeah, and the last thing I want to touch on regarding the LYX, so the mainnet token, which is kind of bullish, when LYX reaches 2 billion in market cap and sustains that for 6 months plus, the smart contract will freeze a minimum of 55% of the foundation's funds over a 5-year period, permanently removing them from supply forever. So although we're starting off at the 42 million, once we get to that 2 billion market cap, it's going to get smaller than that. So once LUKSO starts, here, disclaimer, speculation nation, NFA,
not financial advice.
Yes, all of the disclaimers that ever existed. This is bullish for the token supply. So once people catch on to LUKSO and it's being used and people see the value because we're that triple point asset, much like Ethereum, it's going to be valued as such, in my opinion.
Yeah, I totally agree. That was a great breakdown on the two tokens and the total supply for LYX in the future. Yeah, very bullish for the token supply. Absolutely.
Yeah, especially when comparing it to Ethereum. So, I mean, we're
absolutely.
like, what, 40% of Ethereum? Something like that?
I believe so, yeah. Let's keep pushing on because we want to get as much, LUKSO information into this episode as we possibly can. So we'll break down some of the LSPs, what they mean, and why they're important. So let's get right into it, Beef. What are LSPs?
Really putting me in the hot seat here. Okay. Kind of at the most basic level, I think we've covered it. LUKSO standard proposal. It's just kind of like making it so that developers have like a core set of quotes rules, because remember, this is a blockchain, like you can do whatever you want, that'll make the applications on that blockchain, or on LUKSO, I should say, work in unity together and really harness the power and the vision for what they're trying to accomplish, I guess. But again, you don't have to abide by these proposals, but it's highly recommended that you do. That's the whole reason why we started that L1.
Right. The common analogy in the space and LUKSO ecosystem is comparing each LSP, which there's over 20 now at this point, to Lego blocks, right? Each LSP itself is a Lego block. And as you piece them together, you start to build new and exciting use cases. So LSP stands is in the name, LUKSO standard proposal. It's a proposal for a new standard of smart contract on the LUKSO blockchain. So some of these LSPs include LSP 0, or the 0th standard, which is the universal profile itself, right? Which is a smart contract account, which is made up of all these building blocks to create a interoperable, adaptable, and flexible account or profile that will be able to be upgraded well into the future due to these standards, right? We can constantly write new smart contracts to this account and upgrade and modify its functionality for whatever the space wants or needs at that given time, which is very, very exciting. It has the ability to, these LSPs have the ability to store metadata, which has never been done. It's essentially creating your universal profile. I know that sounds cliche because it's all in the name, but they really spelled it out for us. You'll be able to take your profile and use it essentially anywhere in the LUKSO universe. And as LUKSO continues to grow, you'll be able to use it in more and more dApps and take your data with you cross-platform. Instead of building your profile on every single platform, you bring your profile to the platform. And that is very, very exciting.
Yeah, that was a great breakdown. The things I would kind of say on top of that is just, kind of breaking down some of the individual LSPs without getting too lost in the weeds, because we're trying not to make this super long. But the new version of ERC20 and 721, I believe it is, the NFT standard, are now LSP 7 and LSP 8. And the main thing I want to highlight is unlimited metadata can be attached to said assets, which is something that is unique to LUKSO, from my understanding. So that can open up, well, if it's decentralized, unique to LUKSO. Like you could have standard centralized options that probably do this, but not decentralized. So that's pretty dope.
Yeah, for sure. And I think something to note that a lot of people I don't think realize is that when you take your MetaMask, right? Say I have an NFT in my MetaMask and I go and connect it to OpenSea. What they do is they pull the contract address that is connected to my EOA, and then they index the entire blockchain for that smart contract address, and then pull that data out from somewhere that's stored centrally, and put that on their platform, right? So you don't have any information besides a 32 character string that represents what you hold in your wallet, right? It doesn't represent your NFTs at all. But with a universal profile, you can store that metadata within your universal profile wherever you so choose. You could store it in a Google Drive, you could store it on IPFS, you could store it on Ocean Protocol, wherever you want to store it. That is your data. And so now DApps don't have to index the entire blockchain every time you connect and want to pull up your NFT. They just have to check your universal profile. And you can give them control to check that. Or you don't have to give them control if you don't think that site needs access to that information. So again, you are taking control of your data. This is the first time in human history that we have been able to take control of our own data and bring it from platform to platform, rather than these platforms taking our data, storing it centrally, and a lot of the times selling it off to whoever to use that data for their benefit, right? We get control of our data once again, and it'll make DApps easier to use. It'll likely decrease gas costs because they're doing less on the network. We're storing less things. We're storing things off chain, but it's you that's storing them. It's not the company that's storing them anymore. So those little differences right there for the NFT and token standards are a huge benefit for the user.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be really interesting to see how all that unravels and develops as time goes on too, because we're barely scratching, I think, the surface of what the possibilities are here. Much like I think Fabian said, like when they made that ERC20 standard, they didn't know exactly where it would lead to, and I think the same applies here. So it'll be very interesting.
Absolutely.
Another key aspect of the LSPs is the ability to be using a transaction relayer. Can you kind of talk about that? What is that? And that's possible?
Yeah, it is very possible. So a transaction relayer is a way for yourself or a company or organization to cover gas fees for their users. Now, there's multiple ways to set this up, but you can think of it sort of in the Web2 world, where if you were to go to a department store and pay with a credit card, behind the scenes, there's a $3 to $5 credit card fee, for the network fee, for everything to go through, for them to check that you have the credit, and yada, yada, yada. But if you go to a department store, you don't have to pay that credit card fee. You have no idea that's happening because it's all happening in the background. And the reason for this is the user experience, right? And if you were to go to a store and every time you purchase something, you had to pay an extra $5 at the very end of your transaction, you would kind of feel not too great about it, right? Over time, it kind of drags on you and you're like, why am I paying this $5? Versus if you go to a store and you just swipe your card and you walk right out, you feel like $1 million. Right. And so the same thing goes with the user experience for the blockchain. If you've ever transacted on Ethereum or most other EVM chains, you know that there are gas fees. And sometimes those gas fees can be very, very high, which is not fun for anyone. But with a relay service, we have the ability to completely hide those gas fees for everyone, right? So there's different ways to set this up. Like I said, you could do some sort of subscription thing where you pay, I don't know, $5, $10, $15 a month, however much you access the network. And that will go towards covering your gas fees. you could have your staking rewards automatically go to the relay service and cover your gas fees that way. Companies could take a percentage of a transaction and put that towards a pool, which covers gas fees. There's tons of ways to do it. The ecosystem is completely open to any of these options. But the important thing is that we'll be able to onboard new users using this relay service because they don't have to worry about paying for gas fees. They don't have to worry about having this extra $5, $10, $15 worth of LYX in their wallet, which a lot of people are deterred from using Ethereum because of this. It's just a known fact. So having this relay service will allow people to transact seamlessly on the network and honestly probably not even know that they are using the blockchain, which is the first big step towards mass adoption in this space.
Amen. Amen. I just wanted to add a few points that I recently got retweeted by Yaman. So I do know that these at least are accurate or should be. So the LSPs enable user-chosen, customized, layered security, 2FA, social recovery, multi-sig, and those aspects can be added or taken off of your universal profile without the need for a new account or wallet. That's the part that makes it super unique as well. Because other wallets, smart wallets, like contract wallets for Ethereum, can have certain aspects of this, but the fact that you can modify it, that's what's unique. And then have like all of these. Also, like you touched on, relay systems like cell phone bills where they don't have to make a crypto centralized exchange account to participate in like the community drops. They can do that monthly bill and then just add more LYX to their account whenever they need it for like, say, a new NFT. The ability to easily identify the artist or entity that releases assets clearly on chain as a deployer. So sometimes, I don't know if you guys have ever played around with Etherscan, you can see like a contract that deploys it. There's like addresses, but it's not always clear what entity is behind it. So like different drops have different contract addresses. And what this is going to allow is it's going to, when you're using and navigating universal profiles, you'll be able to see the artist or entity that's actually the person who deployed it. So that way you can verify who it is. So no more confusing contract address deployments. And then universal receiver. This is pretty sick. So the ability to be notified when assets are received in the user's profile. And then you can kind of tweak it in the future where you can like whitelist certain profiles or certain types of assets to allow them to be received or to automatically reject them. And then maybe you could even do something like where if you get LYX sent to your account, it's automatically sent to your vault. So that's pretty cool. And then, yeah, the last thing is just overall that ability to upgrade our scalability as Ethereum does because we're that L1. We're our own L1, so we're not relying on Ethereum at all to post our validations, our transactions, but we can handpick the parts that they do as far as their developmental side and apply them to LUKSO if we see fit.
Awesome. And I think we've really covered a lot of the ins and outs of LUKSO. We've covered universal profiles. We've covered LSPs, specific LSPs like LSP1, LSP0, and there's LSP 7 and 8, the NFT and token standards. And there's a lot more. There's a lot more to get into, but I think we really want to keep it surface level for our listeners today. And just remind you guys that we are not experts in the space. We're just, as Beef always says, we're just two dudes talking about what we love. We're doing this as a community good for the greater ecosystem. So if there's anything that we got mistaken today, or if there's anything that we didn't touch on that you as community members would like to hear about, please feel free to reach out to us. We're always open to new suggestions. We're always trying to improve the show and get the best content in your hands about LUKSO. So, Beef, do you want to sign us off?
For sure. Hopefully this episode makes you super excited and bullish like we are. So, NFA, but as always, this is not financial advice. This is just a couple of dudes talking about what we love.
Peace.